Well, Russian scientists have produced free energy with a 7 kilowatt generator, which simultaneously showed a dramatic anti-gravity effect where the device lost 30% of its weight. It's an amazing story that Bob Kuntz has on Coast to Coast AM. Dr. Robert Kuntz, Ph.D., experimental nuclear physicist, now attempting to create technology that will allow extraction of usable amounts of energy from the vacuum for the last 6 years or so. He's been investigating methods of producing energy following the work of Nikola Tesla and Dr. Thomas Henry Moray. And here he is back on Coast to Coast. Hey, Robert, how are you?
Hello, George Norrie. It's an honor to speak with you. You know, when Art left, I didn't know for sure if you were going to be able to do it or anybody could do it. But you're doing a good job.
Well, holding on. They're big shoes to fill, aren't they?
Oh, my goodness. Art is a legend.
He sure is.
Let's get to this.
What is this?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what's going on. There are, you know, my friend John Hutchison. He's been on your program many times. Well,
yeah.
He's been able to levitate 70-pound cannonballs with his device. But now John Hutchison is not a conventional scientist. Now, I am a conventional scientist, but John Hutchison is self-taught, but he is a wonderful instrument maker, and he built these Tesla devices, that the Tesla coils that he modified so they wouldn't spark, and on and on and on. And he's able to levitate 70-pound cannonballs, and there have been many, many free energy devices that work. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that such systems as Stan Myers and also Dr. Thomas Henry Moray, brilliant. And he was a PhD electrical engineer in the 1930s. But now, as far as I know, when it comes to a well-credentialed conventional scientist at a good top-name institution, the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow,
okay,
doing experiments in a conventional way and reporting them with a conventional paper. Now, I'm not talking about an internet site or something, right? I'm talking about well-established journals. And so this is the first time, to my knowledge, that any such scientists have reported findings, really important findings like these in this way. So let me tell you what's going on here. These people, these two scientists, and that's Roshan and Godin, followed up on the work of John Searl, who is an English professor. I don't know what his degree is in, but he developed this Searl, what they call Searl devices, SEGs, Searl effect generators.
It's the Searl effect, isn't that what it's called?
Yes, it's the Searl effect. These scientists in Russia have confirmed the Searl effect. They set up a system. Now listen to this, George. They set up this system, and I don't want to get into the details too much. It's on my website, drkuntz.com, DOCTORKOONTZ.com. But they set up this rotating Searl system about 1 meter wide. It weighed about 350 kilograms, or around that would be 700 pounds. Okay, and they got it going, and it started. It's a very sophisticated thing. These are not. These are very sophisticated pieces of apparatus that must be designed exactly right. So it's. But after the long story made short, when this thing started operating, first you have to pump it. You have to get it going, just like you have to start your car with your key and the battery. But they got it going, and it went into a self-sustaining mode where it produced 7,000 watts of power, while simultaneously losing 30% of its weight. Now, that's not a small amount of weight. When this thing weighs 350 kilograms or 700 pounds, 30% of that's what, 200 pounds?
That's huge.
It's huge. This is a tremendous report. Now, again, men like John Hutchison and, of course, Searl before this confirms the Searl effect. So before this, it establishes anti-gravity. Now, I've already known that anti-gravity exists for many, many reasons. Even though many of my physics colleagues, or colleagues, yes, not colleagues, but fellow physicists don't understand this, but anti-gravity is a reality because for many reasons, and mostly experimental, but also theoretical. So this is extraordinary. These Russian scientists now. I was blown away. Now, a very important American scientist brought this to my attention. I don't want to mention his name because, well, for many reasons, but he's a very important fellow. He brought this to my attention, and at first, I just thought, well, it's another paper, and oh, goodness, I'm going to have trouble reading this. But as soon as I saw what they were doing, I was consumed by it. This is extraordinary. Now, that's not the only thing. There are bands of magnetic walls that exist around this device. And they occur at every 60 centimeters, which is a well-known wavelength for me because that's the wavelength of 6 kilohertz phonons in copper. So it's a scalar wavelength. This is scalar physics, 100% scalar physics, and it's also magnetic phase conjugation. Years and years ago, Philip Corso told us that these saucers operate with magnetic phase conjugation or magnetic cancellation. You know what I'm saying, George? If you put, say, a North Pole against a North Pole.
It repels, right?
Yeah, that repels. Now, what happens to the field energy? Many conventional physicists would say, well, it's just rearrangement of the atoms and molecules. But that's not always the case. There can be a gauge transformation, what's called a gauge transformation, where the magnetic field energy goes someplace else. Now, where does it go? Well, I have a good theoretical explanation, but it goes into production of scalar energy or scalar waves. So magnetic phase conjugation is how you make these scalar signals, the scalar waves, that's what John Hutchison does. His Tesla coils, modified Tesla coils, these are not sparking coils. They don't spark, but he modified them so and put several of them 1 million volt Tesla coils, one against the other in a parallel operation, and he cancels the electromagnetic fields and produces scalar waves, and that produces the anti-gravitic effect. So anti-gravity, and again, Colonel Philip Corso was telling this many, many years ago, and there's another report I have from a person who had an encounter supposedly with extraterrestrials, and they also said it's electromagnetic phase conjugation.
Do you think the Egyptians knew this also, Bob, and hence they made the pyramids this way?
Well, that's possible. And, I don't know about that, but I do know about Lee Scallion. I've studied that. That system, I understand. He's also making scalar waves. He had that wheel with the magnets on it that he would spin. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not. But basically, he was making scalar waves. Now, what is not known is that he had coils that he would put on next to that spinning magnet system, and they were resonantly tuned to scalar frequencies, and it would pick up this magnetic energy. Oh, by the way, a guy named, I don't want to give his name on the air, but that is approval, but a young fella at Purdue University replicated something that Lee Scallion claimed. He said that he could something called the holding magnet, the Lee Scallion holding magnet. Now, this is incredible. This blew the physicists away at Purdue, but they wouldn't believe it. They still don't believe it. They don't know what to do with it. They're helping this guy. He set this electromagnet up, and basically it got going, and once he got it started, he could remove the power, and it would produce. The current would flow in the magnet, and the magnetic field would be sustained. This is an electromagnet without any external source of power.
With the machine shut off already.
With the machine shut off, the same thing that these Russians did, and also John Searl.
Well, in Lee Scallion,
one more thing.
All right, go ahead.
This Russian experiment. Their device ran cold. Now, that's characteristic of scalar devices, free energy devices. Not all of them, but most of the really good ones. Dr. Moray's device, the harder you pumped it, he had a 50,000 watt tabletop generator in the 1930s, and the harder you pumped that baby, the colder it got. And that's because this scalar energy is conserved, George. Physicists keep saying these free energy devices can't work because energy is not conserved. But you can make all the positive energy you want, George, if you make an equal